So apparently 10 Cuban nationals took a speedboat from Florida to Cuba in an attempt to free the island from communism. Let's just say that plan didn't work out too well. Let's talk about it. How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about at least 10 Cuban nationals taking the speedboat from Florida to Cuba in an attempt to free the island from communism. Now, what the Cuban authorities said is that these guys on the boat opened fire on their guard first, and they returned fire. Now, at least 4 of the 10 people are dead. May they rest in peace, prayers out to the family. However, what else is going to happen when you try to go to a country and invade it? I don't care what country it is. I don't care who they are, where they are. That's going to happen. Hey, don't try that in the USA. But if you did try that here in the USA, you would get the same exact result or worse. You might get hit with this combobulator, a recombobulator, and some more stuff. It might be a lot worse than what happened to those guys out there in Cuba. But there's questions. Why did they do this? What was motivation? What made them think they could pull this off? Were they trying to retrieve family members, friends? What was the ultimate purpose? What was the deeper goal here? Now, before I go any further, let's get straight to the news clip. Of course, I will link to everything in the description box if you want to see it and hear it without my commentary. If you're on IG, Facebook, etc., visit a link in the bio. Go to the corresponding article on the website. But without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Tonight, we're also learning a lot more about that deadly shootout that took place yesterday off the coast of Cuba. All 10 men, which Cuba described as heavily armed and bent on terrorism, have been living in the United States. And according to a U.S. official, at least one of the 4 dead was a citizen of the United States.
Let's pause. Now, the initial reports that I read, it said that they were all Cuban nationals. But at least one of them now is an American, and I think that person is also dead.
Here's CBS News correspondent Christian Benavides. Christian, good evening.
Tony, good evening. U.S. officials are pressing for answers from Cuban officials, and they're calling for an independent investigation into the deadly incident that happened in Cuban waters. A White House official confirmed to CBS News that U.S. citizens and legal residents were involved in yesterday's deadly shootout off the coast of Cuba. And we're told at least one U.S. citizen is currently in Cuban custody. According to Cuba's Ministry of the Interior, the Florida-registered boat was a nautical mile northeast of the El Pino Canal in Cayo Falcones when the Cuban border guard approached it for identification. Cuban officials claimed there were 10 armed men on board and that they opened fire first, injuring a Cuban commander. Cuba says its border guard returned fire, killing 4 men and injuring 6 others. The injured were taken to this hospital in Cuba for treatment.
Now, look, if that's the story, I have no problem with what Cuba did, because what else are they going to do? Now, I'm not a fan of their government, the way they run things, but that's their country. They got right to sovereignty a little bit, at least. So if you do something like that, you're just a regular person, and you do something like that, well, hey, it is what it is. Even if you're the military and you do that, you have to expect to get return fire. You have to expect return fire.
Cuban officials say assault rifles, homemade explosive devices, and bulletproof vests were seized. They claim the men intended to carry out an infiltration for terrorist purposes.
We're going to find out exactly what happened here, and then we'll respond accordingly.
Shout out to Marco Rubio. Hey, I'm sorry for the pausing, but I just got to say, Marco, this is my favorite guy right now, aside from Trump. 2028, I want him to be the president. Respectfully, I like J.D. Vance. Respectfully, he is nowhere near as good as Marco Rubio. That's just facts. Okay, they about to put Marco Rubio on this too. He already got 1,000 jobs. You got Venezuela, Greenland, Cuba. You got everything else other than what Trump has. What does J.D. Vance do? I don't know, but I digress.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
We obviously want to have access to these people.
We have also learned tonight that the U.S. vessel in question was stolen. A sheriff's report obtained by CBS News states it was reported stolen yesterday. The boat's owner told law enforcement he knew one of the men on board who is believed to have taken it. The vessel is a 24-foot Proline motorboat manufactured in 1981, similar to this one. Tonight, Cuban officials released the names of all 10 men on board. Among the 4 killed, Michelle Ortega Casanova.
His phone is still ringing.
Ibrahim Bosch hasn't stopped calling his friend Ortega. Together, they attended rallies advocating for freedom in Cuba.
What was he like?
Una excelente persona.
He was an excellent person.
Ortega's family tells CBS News they have not received any information and are pleading for answers on how they can recover his body.
Let's pause. Let's go back a little bit. Now, one thing that I read, you can see the vehicle here, Partido Republicano de Cuba. So he's like super into liberating Cuba, the freedom of Cuba, the well-being of Cuba. And from what I read, they said it was like a years-long obsession. And apparently his desire, and that's a nice, what's that, a Charger, Challenger? Shout out to you. His desire to see Cuba get liberated may have become an obsession that became a deadly tragedy, potentially. That's why this happened.
They can recover his body. Another friend who knew Ortega said that Ortega told him that he was willing to risk everything for Cuba, including taking up arms. Cuban officials, meantime, said that they have a right to defend their territorial waters.
They most certainly do. They absolutely do. Now, there's one more news clip here. There's one more, but before we get to it, you see what it says right here. Man killed on a speedboat off Cuba, lived in U.S. for 20 years and had an obsessive quest for Cuba's freedom. Okay, so that might have been the guy we just saw right there with the green Charger Challenger. All right. Hey, you can't just do whatever you want to do. I understand. If you want Cuba to be free, I want Cuba to be free too. But trying to just steal somebody's boat, a random little leisure party boat, whatever, little fishing boat, whatever you want to call that, and then go do that, you're just leading yourself into, it's like a kamikaze mission. You're not going to survive that. You will not survive that. Now, let's go here and check out a little bit more.
Russian tanker full of much-needed fuel for Cuba is diverted at sea. But first, the latest from Cuba and the deadly confrontation with a group of men on board a Florida-registered speedboat off the Cuban coast. Cuba maintains the group was intending to infiltrate the communist island. Our Bridget Matter with what we've uncovered.
Questions left unanswered one day after 4 men were killed and 6 others injured on board a speedboat in waters off the Cuban coast. That boat registered in Florida. Local 10 has confirmed it was stolen from Big Pine Key before sailing south to the communist island. The Cuban government releasing their version of events, claiming the men on board had plans to infiltrate and terrorize the island. They say the men fired at Cuban Coast Guard members, injuring a commander.
Se detectó una lancha rápida infractora.
Items seized from the speedboat include assault rifles, handguns, improvised devices, body armor, telescopic sights, and camouflage uniforms.
We're going to find out exactly what happened here, and then we'll respond accordingly.
Well, they had quite a bit of stuff on board, and I don't want to get too much into repeating what they said in the first one, but they had quite a bit of stuff on board. Let's go back. So you got rifles, handguns, IEDs, armor, you got sights, camouflage, but you got a little speedboat. You were not properly equipped. You had a lot of that stuff. You might have been able to buy online or whatever. Okay, that's fine. But that little boat, that ain't going to do it. And again, you can't just go do stuff like that. And if you want to do stuff like that, well, hey, you might not live too much longer after you initiate the confrontation. So that's what happened there. I was kind of confused. As I saw this, it broke. Like, I think I might have been streaming. What was that? State of the Union address on Tuesday, or it might have been my Wednesday stream. And then this story came about. I'm like, what's going on with that? What happened there? Like, you know, I thought it might have been an American, like, military vessel. But no, this is just civilians wanting to liberate Cuba, going about it in all the wrong ways. Now, as I close, I want to say this. Shout out to Cuba for defending themselves. They got to do that. To these guys, I understand what you wanted to do. I totally get it. I am sympathetic towards your cause, but that was the absolute wrong way to do it. I think the best way is to rely upon your world powers, rely upon the USA. We saw Bit Marco, who's Cuban, by the way. We saw him speak. If you get him in office and or keep him around DC, he could help liberate Cuba more than you could ever do in your little speedboat with your online order gadgets. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? What's your opinion about this whole situation? Do you think that it was something that they got put up to? Maybe it was just more people involved. It wasn't just those 10 on board. Maybe they were more involved. Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. I think it was just these guys that got wrapped up in that, came up with the idea. decided to go try and do it, and they got something that they probably didn't prepare for, okay? Because obviously there's no way that you as just regular civilians in the speedboat are going to do anything with the Cuban defenses. Now, the Cuban defenses may not be enough for the U.S. military, okay, or maybe the Russian military, but you and your speedboat have no chance. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.